So you can see the interior of that one is a little more red than, say, that improved Celeste was. So this one does have some berry notes to go along with that. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a wonderful day. It is Tuesday, June 24th here in South Georgia, and we're right in the middle of this heat wave. It's scorching out here right now. We're going to try to do a little figging around before it gets too hot out here. And on today's video, I'm going to show you some of the earliest producing varieties we have in our fig orchard. Going to talk about why you would want an early producing fig variety besides the obvious reason, and then I'll walk you around and show you some of these figs we've been enjoying lately. But first, as we always like to do on these fig videos, let's have a little state of the orchard address, show you how things are going in general with the orchard. So in general, things are looking pretty good in the orchard right now. Our trees are nice and lush and green and loaded up with figs. You can't even really tell at this point that we had as much winter dieback as we did. So the trees like this Atlanta fig tree here and those two cherry cordial trees behind it that died back to the ground this winter have rebounded wonderfully. Can't even really tell that we lost any growth on these. They have came back with a vengeance. Now there were a few trees that died back and didn't rebound, and 4 of them happen to be right in this spot here in front of the orchard. I have since replaced those, added another Harry's Creek tree right there. Put that Mount Vernon fig tree right there. We talked about that a month or so ago on a video. Also got another 1 or 2 Salem dark trees added right there to fill in those gaps. So when we're not getting rain, we're running the irrigation. We're watering these trees very well in this sandy soil here. Also feeding them very well with some granular fertilizer, because I have found the more I water them, the more I feed them, the more I can delay the onset of rust. Haven't really figured out a way to prevent the rust completely yet, but we keep them nice and happy. The rust will be later to come on and strip these trees. Now, when they do get stripped, they'll put on new leaves, but we're trying to see if we can delay that process and maybe even eventually prevent that process through watering and feeding in our sandy soil. Now, as you can see with this Smith tree here, rust is gonna happen, but maybe, just maybe, if we treat these trees really well, we can prevent that complete defoliation that we often get in the middle of the summer before they put on a bunch of new leaves for another round of production in the fall. Now you'll notice as we're walking around looking at some of these trees, I've got quite a few of them wrapped up with string, just like we do this strawberry verite tree right here. So we just got string running all around this thing, wrapping it up like you would a Christmas tree before you're gonna load it in the car, on top of the car, and take it home. Here with these 2 LSU Rourke trees, you can especially see what we've done here. And the reason we had to do this was because of the way these trees grew back after dying back to the ground this winter. So the new growth that we were getting was just sprawling all over the ground here, to the point where I was running over it with my lawnmower. And so I had to do something. I didn't want to cut it off just yet because it wasn't hardened off, and I wanted to save that wood for cuttings this fall. So instead of getting rid of it, we just wrapped up these trees. That way we save that wood. It doesn't break off or get hit with a lawnmower. Now, doing this, maybe not the best thing for fig production because everything's so tightly wound there, but we are preserving some of that growth there so it doesn't break off. Had a lot of limbs that were laying to the ground or low to the ground that were getting broke off by the heavy rain. So this is helping us out a little bit here. We won't leave it on there permanently. We'll cut it off this fall when we prune those trees, but it just makes the orchard more manageable for me right now. Never had to do this before, but since we had so much winter dieback this year, I have had to resort to this. Now you can see better what was happening with this dark Portuguese tree right here. So all that growth you see right there was killed this past winter. We had some new growth forming out the bottom here where those heavy rains was breaking that new growth. That's what was happening on a lot of these trees. Now thankfully we got a little bit of green coming through there, so this puppy isn't dead yet, but I really wanted to save that new growth as opposed to all of it breaking. That's why we had to wrap these trees. Now, a very important lesson I learned when wrapping a good many of those trees last week is about that fig sap and how it can burn your skin. I almost always wear long sleeves out here. For some reason, last week when I was doing that, I had a short sleeve shirt on and I paid for it. You can see nice little blister right there, and I've got several of them on this hand right here. Some of them bubbled up pretty nasty. So if you're messing around with green fig trees like that are full of sap, and you know that sap's gonna get on your arms, make sure you wear long sleeves. Probably not a bad idea to wear gloves either. Not saying it will do this to everybody, and it hasn't really done this to me in the past, but it definitely got me last week. So that's kind of the state of the orchard as it stands. Now let's talk about some of these early ripening varieties and why you would want an early ripening variety. So number one is pretty obvious, right? You would want an early ripening variety because you get figs sooner. You get to enjoy some delicious figs, you know, this time of year as opposed to having to wait another month or two. The second reason you might want an early ripening fig is for that staggered production that we've talked about in the past. So you've got early ripening figs, mid-season figs, and some figs that don't mature until later in the warm growing season. And let's just assume maybe you only had room for maybe 3, 4, 5 fig trees in your backyard. It would be nice to have a little bit of each, an early fig, mid-season fig, and a late season fig. That way you could have figs all throughout the warm growing season. A third reason you would want to grow an early ripening fig is if you have a relatively short warm growing season. So some of the varieties we have around here don't ripen until the fall. They take a long time, and those varieties probably wouldn't be well suited for, you know, somewhere up north where their warm growing season is short. Those figs may never ripen for you. But an early producing variety, you could count on that one to give you some production even in an area with a short warm growing season. So now let's walk around and take a look at some of the ones we've been enjoying lately, and I'll try to go in order as I've noticed these ripening, or I should say as Titus has noticed these ripening. He's the one that lets me know when we've got ripe figs on a particular tree. He's out here patrolling dang near every day in the summer when he's out of school. So we'll try to go in order with these, and they've all started ripening within about a week and a half of each other, so not a huge difference there, but some of them are always earlier than others. So the first fig variety to ripen every single year around here is this improved Celeste, and we started eating figs off these trees last week. So Titus has been coming out here about every day, picking him a shirt full of figs, and he'll bring several to me in my office. He's been eating a lot of these. We haven't harvested enough to make any jelly yet because he's been eating so many. But these trees right here are really consistent, make a beautiful tree and a really tasty fig. So this is a sugar fig, makes really good fig preserves, and Improved Celeste tends to have a fairly tight eye on the bottom. The bugs don't get into these near as bad as they will something like brown turkey, and these are just a hair bit larger than brown turkey. A little higher quality fig in my opinion. The taste is similar, but just a better looking fig overall. And there you can see the inside's got that nice kind of caramel color that most sugar figs have. Now the second variety we noticed ripening out here this year was this little Hog Island tree right here. Not a super fast growing variety. In fact, this might be a great variety for growing in pots and containers because it doesn't seem to get that huge. The figs don't get that big either, but they are pretty tasty. So this variety is native to the Virginia Barrier Islands. Used to be a favorite of President Grover Cleveland back in the day. So kind of a neat variety to have in the orchard with a little historical background to it. So you can see there with that one in my hand, not a very large fig at all, not much bigger than a cherry, but very meaty, sugary, and tasty. And I was just informed last week that there are actually 2 Hog Island varieties out there, 2 varieties that are native to that area of Virginia. So there's that smaller Hog Island fig, which I have, and there's another one called Hog Island Higby. I've never seen it, but supposedly that one is much larger. We have the smaller one here in our orchard. Next on our early ripening list is this yellow Greek variety. So I've got 2 of these trees, one here and one right behind it. They're both pretty much the same size. See some good consistent growth out of this variety in our orchard. See if we can find us a nice ripe one here. There we go. So this is kind of a greenish yellow fig when it gets ripe, a really pretty fig. A lot of your honey figs will have those little brown or black sugar spots all over them. This variety doesn't have a ton of those on it. Makes a really pretty fig. And so for some of the honey figs we have, when they have those sugar spots all over the outside, when we're making jelly, I'll just scrape out the pulp because I don't want that black in my jelly. But with a variety like this, these figs are so pretty, we just use the whole fig, skin and all. Now this yellow Greek fig here reminds me a lot of LSU Olier. It's definitely different because it ripens a lot earlier, but when it's completely at peak ripeness, it does have some fruity notes in there. It's a honey fig, but you'll get some of those fruity notes sometimes that make it really tasty. Next on our list, we've got our old reliable LSU Tiger. When somebody completely new to figs asks for a variety recommendation, this is the variety I often suggest just because it's so easy to grow, grows fast, and tastes really good. I think we've got a really nice one right there. Look at that one. So you can kind of see those stripes on there. That's why it's called LSU Tiger, and these were pretty good size this year. Probably has a lot to do with how much we've been watering lately and how much rain we've been getting. Now this one is a sugar fig, but it's more of a sugar berry fig. So you can see the interior of that one is a little more red than say that improved Celeste was. So this one does have some berry notes to go along with that kind of sugar caramel flavor. Next on our list is our old reliable brown turkey here. Everybody wants to know how this tree is doing after we cut it back with a chainsaw several years ago, and you can see it is lush with lots of new growth there. I didn't prune it back this past year, probably should have. It is really dense right now, and some of those figs inside there we won't ever be able to see or get to. But we can get these on the outside here, and you can see got several ripening right there. So this variety is just starting to do its thing. And then last on our list, one that I just noticed out here this morning is this white Marseille variety, a really fast growing variety, really productive variety, supposedly a really cold hardy variety. And so similar to that yellow Greek I showed you earlier, this is another honey fig here that's kind of greenish yellow when it's ripe. And I don't know that I would call that one right there peak ripe, but it's pretty dang close. Y'all know me, I don't like to wait and let them get all soggy on the tree. I like to have a little texture with them. Now unlike that yellow Greek, which can have some fruity notes to it, this right here is just straight honey fig, but it does make some of the best jelly you have ever had. So of the established varieties in our orchard that are producing well for us, those are the earliest ones. That's not to say that's all the early varieties we have. I've got some trees we planted last year that aren't producing for us yet. I've got about 50 or so trees that me and the boys just planted a couple weeks ago that definitely aren't producing for us yet. So as we go through the years, as some of these trees grow, we may be adding to that list a little bit. But as it stands now with the really productive trees in our orchard, those are the early ones. So I hope you enjoyed that little early fig tour there, and as I'm standing out here burning up right now, I think we do have all those varieties in stock on our website. We've also got our mulberry trees in stock now. If you're interested in those, you can go over to our website, Lazy Dog Farm, and check those out. And if you want to dive deeper down the fig rabbit hole, from early figs to some really massive figs, watch this video right here that we did last year. We'll show you some of the largest figs that we get in our orchard, some almost as big as a tennis ball. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.